innovation.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
So just introduce yourself. And,
Sure.
Yeah, and just a little bit about your films.
Okay, thanks. So my name is Josh Fox. I just got to Standing Rock, although I did participate in the rally in Union Square in New York City with the amazing runners, the youth runners that ran all the way from North Dakota to D.C. So I've known about the issue, obviously, for months and months. It's the biggest environmental story, the biggest climate change story, the biggest civil rights story on the planet right now. So I'm very, very happy to be here. I made a film called Gasland in 2010, which was a really, I think, some of the first reporting on fracking. That I made it because Southern New kinship between those two struggles. So Gasland, that film, it, premiered at Sundance Film Festival. It went on HBO. It was nominated for the Oscar. It was seen in 32 countries worldwide by probably 50, maybe more, 50 million people. And the fracking movement, took that movie, and I toured all across America to 250, 300 different cities. I also made a sequel called Gasland 2, which is about how the oil and gas industry is fracking our government. It's about the corruption in the government. It's about, we know that fracking injects toxic chemicals into the ground. Gasland 2 was all about how fracking injects toxic dollars into our government. And shows all the corruption at both the state, the local, and the federal level. So it tracks 3 different EPA investigations that the Obama administration just shut down, even though there was really conclusive evidence that fracking was causing water contamination. At the same time as the industry was saying they don't do anything, the EPA was investigating, they had the evidence, Obama administration shut it down. It was very, very, very upsetting. That's Gasland Part 2. So I've just made a film about climate change, which is called How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change. It's very much about our values. A lot of those values come from the indigenous world, but they're reflected in people all over the world right now. So we're talking about climate change, but we also have to talk about values. We have to talk about peace. We have to talk about community. We have to talk about human rights, democracy, innovation, creativity, love. And in many of the scenes in the film goes all over the world, from the Amazon from Sarayaku. I know you had some people from Sarayaku here, in Standing Rock. To the Pacific Climate Warriors who are fighting against sea level rise in the Pacific Ocean, to the Rockaways in New York City where people drowned in their own homes because the hurricane came in and brought the ocean to their doorstep so fast that they couldn't escape. This new sense of values is emerging among the climate fighters that are happening all across the world. Right?
The world, which
I see that happening here. We're talking, our current system is based on greed. It's based on competition. It's based on institutionalized racism. It's based on violence. It's based on individuality and consumerism, These are the values that have led us to ruin. These are the values of the oil interests. These are the values that we're seeing here in the brutality of the police force of North Dakota. We're seeing in the insensitivity and degradation of Dakota Access Pipeline. And it's truly showing how fossil fuels are racist. Fossil fuels are sexist. Fossil fuels are against indigenous people, against indigenous values. Fossil fuels are brutalizing force, and they're outmoded, and we have to get rid of them. Here in North Dakota, you have one of the greatest wind resources on the planet. North Dakota is one of the windiest places on Earth. In fact, all of the United States could be supplied with power. Everything, cars, everything that we need power for could be supplied by wind in just 3 states, North Dakota, Kansas, and Texas. North Dakota, Kansas, and Texas could be the wind powering the entire United States. Instead, we have an oil company that's bringing the worst fossil fuel on the planet, fracked oil from the Bakken, and possibly also tar sands oil, right, from the tar sands, underneath the river that provides water for 17 million people, and in an incredible oppression of indigenous people, and here in the Standing Rock Reservation. And I find it's an outrage. That's why I'm here to try to support. I'm reporting. I'm doing some work for Now This. I'm doing some work for Daily Beast. I'm also doing independent, documentary. But really, I'm here to just to be on the front lines and support, because the front line is everywhere. I know what it's like to be a member of the frontline community, right, in the Delaware River Basin. We beat the oil industry. We made sure they didn't frack, and we did that because we were organized. And we have to make sure that we beat them here, and that's why I'm here to try to help in any way I can.
Which I think most people, that haven't never heard of your films, are probably aren't familiar with what you do, you know, I think it's really important for folks like you to show up, because you have had your own fight. I mean, you can like relate to it in a personal level, but then also I think that you are doing this worldwide. You're not just like focusing on America. So I think that it's really important for folks like you to come out. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bismarck. So basically that pipeline was going to go through Bismarck first. So when you talk about like you know, being the oil industry being racist, they are being racist because Bismarck said, you know what, we don't want it here. You know, just take it down there. So tell me a little bit more about like using what you do, which is your filmmaking and you know, and activism as a form of, you know.
Well, you know, I didn't start off as a journalist. I'm a theater director and a filmmaker, and I work with actors a lot for my whole life, you know. And I always know that when you're a director, your intention and your heart has to connect with the actor whose intention and their heart, it has to be in the same place, right? You always know what you're working on, right? Whether you're trying to act for a commercial or doing something really shallow. And I think that when you're in documentary, I came to this because I was a person in the same boat. I went to visit ranchers in Wyoming. You know, these ranchers were completely unlike me in my life, but we could relate to each other because we were fighting the same struggle. And so my films are very much about connecting. You know, I want to connect to people. I want to hear their stories. I don't want to be a soundbite and get out of there. Do you know what I mean?
Which is what a lot of journalists.
A lot of journalists will do that. Documentary, long form documentary is different, and I have a perspective. I think this stuff is wrong. You know what I mean? I'm not going to come in here and interview somebody and then go to the oil company and be like, "What do you have to say?" Because I know the oil company is lying. I don't think that's journalism. I think that's just he said, she said kind of nonsense. I think we have an obligation to the truth. And there's a very real truth here on the ground that people are defending their water, and that's the story. So, you know, that reporting that you see in Gasland or Gasland 2 or the new film, I think it's very sensitive, and I think the people in it are my friends. And you can see that there's a friendship there. In fact, Albert Maysles, the great documentarian, who is one of my teachers, he said the whole process is a friendship. You know, you get to know, and then everybody gets to know. So this idea that we are working together as a community, and that community is one struggle, and we have all these different talents, we have very different perspectives, we have very different backgrounds, but you know, I think that has created an incredible movement across America, which is breaking down a lot of the false boundaries. You know what I mean?
Gonna touch into that. So basically, so we can always preach to the crowd, right? We know there's folks that agree with us and that you know that understand the truth about the oil companies. Right. But how do we bridge into the hearts of those folks that are like a little less aware of all these things?
Well, I mean, I think that what's happening at Standing Rock has really exploded in terms of media consciousness. At least what I'm seeing on Facebook, I'm seeing on Now This. But it's true. The mainstream media, which normally alerts people to what's happening in the world, right, is completely negligent in this case. We don't see CNN here. We don't see even MSNBC here. We don't see Fox News out here. We don't see the New York Times reporting from this. This is inexcusable. This is one of the biggest stories on the planet right now. And, you know, the way that the media has become so corrupt, because they take the money from the oil industry, because they have the influence of major politicians who are not speaking up about this, we have to become the media. And we have to spread person to person. This is what I did. Look, nobody was talking about fracking, you know. So I know that if it was up to the mainstream media, we wouldn't be talking about fracking. If it was up to the mainstream media, we wouldn't be talking about Standing Rock, which is why it's so important what you're doing right now, which is why we build our own networks and we build our own channels for getting material out to people. But it's everybody's obligation. We have to share these things. We have to talk about them. We have to talk to whoever's next to us at dinner. But more than that, we have to act. You know what I mean? It can't just be about clicking on something or share something. We have to get in the streets. We have to show up. I always say that you know you're doing something right for the climate if you've left your house. That's like the test. Did I leave my house? Then I did something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
if you stayed at home and you just clicked on it, you didn't really do anything. But if you left your house, if you went to go sit in at the governor's mansion, if you went to go to a protest, if you went to go lobby your your politicians, if you went to join this action here at Standing Rock, if you found a way to reach out and meet people at a community meeting, at an organizing meeting, at a 350 or a lot of the organizations that we talk about have local chapters. Can you join them? You got to leave your house to do that.
You got to get out of your house, yeah.
So we need people out in the streets because that's what really creates political change. It always comes from the grassroots. We have to show our strength right now against the kind of brutality that we're seeing right now.
So tell me, thank you so much for that, by the way. And
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about like the activism part of it, which specifically with one of your producers. I mean, that's kind of become
Right.
That kind of became so that kind of became like a big thing because
It's a big thing.
We have seen that like oil companies have no shame on like targeting journalists, and we've seen it with Amy Goodman, we've seen it with a lot of folks out here that were just filmmakers. So and now we saw it with your producer, which became a big deal, right?
Sure.
Tell me why.
Okay, so I've spent the last 8 years, or more than that, I think, being a reporter on climate, being a reporter on oil and gas, being a reporter on fracking. I work with an incredible climate reporter. Her name is Dea Schlossberg. She's the producer of our new film, which is called How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change. That's on HBO. She's an award-winning journalist in terms of making her work on fracking. She won Emmys. She's also a National Geographic Adventurer of the Year.
Are you serious?
Because, yes, she walked the entire length of the Andes Mountains on foot, 7,800 miles. So that's something nobody I know has ever done, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen her, in the Amazon with tarantulas on her back, like, just like this. Very dangerous situations that you get into when you're dealing with climate change or you're dealing with the oil industry. She was, but also very important situations, right? I've seen her report on things that nobody would know about. So she was reporting on an action called Shut It Down. A little bit, it was in solidarity with Standing Rock, but it wasn't here. 5 tar sands pipelines in 3 different states, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Washington State, that bring the dirtiest oil on the planet into the United States from the tar sands in Canada, which is in itself a human rights violation, which is destroying the indigenous community in Alberta. Northern Alberta, the tar sands, if you haven't heard about the tar sands, look it up because it will blow your mind. They're most destructive oil on the planet. They're scraping off the entire surface of the earth and destroying an area the size of the state of Florida. It's a disaster. That oil is also incredibly bad for the climate because there's so much energy that goes into it. You get a lot of carbon dioxide, a lot of methane, a lot of greenhouse gases. So these climate activists, very brave climate activists, not Dea, not my producer, but very brave climate activists, went to the shutoff. There were shutoff valves on the pipelines. And they're emergency shutoff valves, right? If something's going wrong. So they said, this is a climate emergency. We're shutting these pipelines down. And they shut them down. They called the companies beforehand to make there was no danger. So they shut the pipelines down manually. They sat there and they waited to be arrested. This is an act of sacrifice because they know they're going to get years in prison.
Oh, wow.
For something like that.
Yeah.
In America. Now, Dea, well, I'll get to what happened to the activists in a minute, but Dea, my producer, was there to film, with the camera. Here we are. This is what we do. We're filming. You know what I'm saying? And so she wasn't a part of the protest. She was arrested as an accessory, held in jail for 53 hours without being able to see a lawyer in North Dakota. That is illegal, in my opinion. And in the eyes of the law, I think you have to, 48 hours, you have to be able to see a lawyer.
Yeah.
The only reason why it's not is because they've declared a state of emergency in North Dakota.
The governor did.
Because of the Standing Rock. Because
Yeah.
and it's not because people are doing peaceful prayer. So that's not an emergency. That's a good thing. So Dea was then charged with 3 felonies, 2 Class A felonies, 1 Class C felony, with a penalty maximum of 45 years in prison. 45 years for filming a protest. Now that's got to send a chill down the spine of every reporter in the nation, every person in the media, and also every citizen of the United States and every person who believes in the Bill of Rights. Because that's not, she was charged with conspiracy. That's not conspiracy. That's a constitutionally protected activity. The First Amendment says freedom of the press. We're allowed to film things as they happen because otherwise people don't know about them. And she thought this is an unprecedented action with an unprecedented kind of bravery. They're shutting these pipelines down. This is big news. I've got to report on this. So they still have confiscated her footage. She still doesn't have her footage back.
Oh, wow.
And she's out of jail now, but she's facing potentially 45 years for doing her job as a journalist. Now, I might have been there. You might have been there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Any one of us who have an iPhone in their hand might have been there. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine there are people who filmed murders for Black Lives Matter, right? Citizens who filmed police murdering people. Can you imagine if those people who shot the video were charged with conspiracy to murder? That's crazy, right?
Yeah,
It's the same thing. Those are people who are showing the world what is happening on the ground. They're not criminals. They're the media. And we are all the media right now because of the way the Facebook Live has changed the world. But we all should have those same rights to report, to show honestly what is happening in the world. And, you know, that is one of the pillars of our free society, as is peaceful protest. When you have peaceful protests going on, you should not be beaten. You should not be pepper sprayed. You should not be put a hood on your head or put in stress positions or poured water on in the way that they're waterboarding. These are human rights violations. And it is a criminal act to destroy the First Amendment. So it is not my producer who is a criminal. It is the people who are charging her. When Dea is on trial, we are all on trial. When these peaceful protesters here on the streets are on trial, we are all on trial. America is on trial. The very idea of what we are is on trial. We're better than this. You know, there is in America with a very, very awful history, a history of genocide, a history of manifest destiny. And that America is very much alive. You see it in the streets right now, you know, harming people, especially indigenous people. But you see it harming black communities as well. You see that through line of American authoritarianism. You see it in Iraq. You see it in Afghanistan. You see it in the drone wars. You see it in Guantanamo. That America of manifest destiny, of the Indian Wars, of the genocide, is still very much alive. There's also an America, though, which stands for equal rights and egalitarianism and the Bill of Rights, and that we are all created equal, and women's rights. And these are the things that of amazing culture that is also America. So you have this insane contradiction, which is America. It kind of cleaves together. And you see that in every one of our battles. You got Donald Trump, you got Bernie Sanders. You know what I mean? You have that running through our history. And you're seeing it being played out every single day today. We've got to make sure. And, you know, look at George Washington. George Washington used to go to the longhouses of the Onondaga Nation and learn about the democracy of the native people there in New York. Well, it was not New York State at that point. It was Onondaga Nation, right? And then he would learn about democracy and learn about that form of government from the indigenous people of America, on the one hand, and then he would go kill them the next night in a different village. So you see the contradiction right down the middle of some of these individuals who are the founding fathers of America. This is something that we absolutely cannot surrender the fight. We cannot allow our nation to go down the path of Andrew Jackson and the genocides. We cannot. This is what we're seeing here today, the path of slavery, the path of degradation of people. America should be a reaction against those kinds of values. And that's what we're seeing here being proven over and over again in the streets. So that's extraordinarily important. I am an immigrant. You know, my father was not born in this country. My mother is first generation. My grandparents did not speak English. You know, my grandparents on my father's side are Jews who were escaping the Nazi Holocaust in Germany. And so I understand what it means to have inside of you something living of that Holocaust, of that intergenerational memory. Yeah. You know, it's somewhere there. Yeah. It's telling me to look out all the time. It's telling and I understand it. You know what I mean? Because I grew up with that knowledge and that history. The Jews were killed. They were slaughtered. They were destroyed. There were millions and millions and millions killed. And when you have that as a part of your history, your feet are on the ground in a whole different way. And you understand when you see brutality, when you see that kind of behavior and sensitivity from people, you know exactly what it is. This is the behavior that is a through line of history that starts 400 years ago in this country, and that is reflected in every part of that genocidal brutality. There's no comparison, of course, but it is a thing that we understand you know, that has to be started to translate to other people in one way or the other. But when I see those cops beating up peaceful protesters, macing people,
grandmas, dude, taking them out of sweat lodge.
Grandmothers being pulled out of sweat lodge. I see Wounded Knee. I see the ideological descendants of Custer. You know, that's what I see when I see those pictures, and that is unacceptable in America in 2016.
So that was amazing, by the way. So two more things. So first thing is the politicians that are not speaking up about this. So Bernie Sanders has come out and said like, hey, yo, like, Mr. Obama, we need to like say something. Jill Stein came out here, you know, supported, showed up. But then you have like the two people that are running for presidency. Like, tell me a little bit more about that, because you were involved in the.
I was a Bernie Sanders surrogate, and I love the Bernie Sanders campaign. Shailene Woodley, who was another surrogate with me, called a lot of attention to this. I'm very grateful to her for bringing me. She called me. She got arrested. You know, so it's inexcusable for our politicians not to be speaking up right now. Absolutely inexcusable for no statement from Hillary Clinton. It's very, very disappointing. She had a chance to correct it. She should say something now. Obama has to step in right now. I mean, I'm reminded of a couple of things. The Freedom Riders in the Civil Rights Movement. These were integrated force, white people, black people, Latinos. They got on the buses. They wanted to integrate the bus lines going to the South. So they would get on the bus in New York and ride to Mississippi, black and white together. Their first bus was bombed.
Oh my God.
The second bus, when they got on, before they got on, they wrote their last will and testament.
Right.
They said, this is that important. And they went over and over and over. It was a great movie about it called The Freedom Riders. They went down, and they went down, and they went down, and they filled up the jail in Mississippi. And they said, our ambition is we're going to fill up the jail. We're going to fill up the jail. And they sang songs in jail. And they did this for months, enduring a lot of brutality. People were beaten. And they did it because they wanted national attention on integration and how segregation was wrong, how racism was wrong in our society. And their call was, we want the Attorney General to come down. We want Robert F. Kennedy to come down and step in here and enforce the law. And that's what I think we should be calling for right now. We need Loretta Lynch. We need the Attorney General. We need Barack Obama. We need Hillary Clinton to come in here and see these are human rights violations. These are the new Freedom Riders. These are the people who are stepping in for our civil rights. And we need you to come down here now. Where the hell are you? What is going on? I mean, the other thing I'm reminded of, Bill McKibben said this on a phone call recently. He said, we all like to cast ourselves in the role of being standing there right next to Martin Luther King in Selma on the bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, I would have been there.
Yeah.
If I was alive, that's where I would be. I would be standing there on that bridge in Selma. That's where I would have been. I've been on the right side of history. Yeah. Hillary Clinton, cast your role. Be here in Selma. Be here with these people. Bernie Sanders is. The leadership, Barack Obama, the leadership should be here alongside of the new Martin Luther King.
He came
and the
here.
new, yeah.
He came here, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, why isn't he on the front line?
He basically said like, oh, you know, so he basically emphasized the children, and you know, the first lady emphasized the children. And then when you think about, I don't know if you saw that kid riding on a horse being followed by ATVs and shot at,
I know.
and the horse.
They shot the horse.
And that's a kid that he probably, you know, possibly. Could have seen here. So
I have to say, Obama, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, you know, have done many good things. They certainly restored the dignity to the office that was gone during George Bush. But this is extraordinarily undignified. To go out there and be this power couple that everybody loves and be silent about this I don't see our leaders right now for what they have done. I see them for what they're not doing. And they're not doing a hell of a lot. They need to be here. They need to stand up to this. Obama, Hillary Clinton, these people who are so-called progressive leaders have to weigh in on this. This is that struggle right now. This is, I mean, obviously you can never compare one thing to another, right? I wouldn't say this is Selma, but what I would say is this is a civil rights moment that we need to acknowledge, that is huge and important. And if you're not on the right side, you're on the wrong side. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you're not on the right side, you're not somewhere in the middle.
No, you can't.
You're on the wrong side if you're staying silent. You're on the wrong side if you're not speaking up. You're on the wrong side if you're not doing something about that. And so, you know, again, leave your house. His house is the White House. Leave the house, get over here, and make sure that you're acting on this in a way that's appropriate, because these are human rights violations that are happening in the United States of America. The United Nations have sent people here. Amnesty International have sent people here.
And this is to indigenous people. It's not to, like, if it was happened to other folks that don't have the history of what has happened to indigenous people, then it will be, I think, it's a little bit different. But I feel like this is the original people of this land, you know. So these are the people that need the most love and the most care out of anybody in the United States. So we're gonna finish up with this really quick, and it's gonna be our exercise.
No, I think that's really, really important. And I mean, let me just add that I've had so many incredible interactions with indigenous people, whether that was in Sarayaku or in Samoa. I was actually adopted by the Blood Tribe in southern Alberta. So I have a name, and they actually have a headdress. I was welcomed because their whole reserve was going to be fracked. This is the Blood Tribe, First Nations, just on the other side of the border in Canada from Montana, and made incredible friends, family. It's a community that welcomes you. There's nothing to be afraid of. It is an extraordinary culture, extraordinary set of values that I've always felt incredibly welcomed and incredibly honored to just be a part of anywhere. You know what I mean? So for me, it's personal on that level, because I've watched indigenous people all across the world and tried to report on these stories that a lot of white people don't know, and say, look, this is still happening. This is happening now. This isn't the 1800s. This is right now. And it's you know, the oil companies and the fracking companies that are now the engine of continuing that genocidal history. And if we don't stop fossil fuels, we won't have a planet to live on. The science is very, very clear in terms of climate change. So these people are not just defending the water. They're not just defending their own land. They're defending all of us against rising sea levels in New York City and Philadelphia and Boston and Washington, D.C. and Miami and New Orleans and Oakley and Berkeley, and yes, Washington, D.C. These are the cities that are vulnerable to climate change because the seas will rise. And James Hansen, the grandfather of the climate movement, said tar sands oil, fracking oil, that's game over for the planet. Game over for the planet. Wow. This isn't a video game. You know what I mean? This is not these people are just defending all of us. These people who are the water protectors, the land defenders, they're also the climate defenders. And they're standing up for all of us who are in vulnerable places all across the world, saying enough is enough. So, you know, I'm very grateful to the stand that they're making. And I just think that the indigenous values that I've been exposed to have been like an embrace. They have been very warm and very welcoming and extraordinarily peaceful and dignified in the face of extreme violence and in the face of extreme oppression. I find it very, very stunning, very moving.
Well, okay.
Sorry, I just went off.
No, I think I think it's really great because, like I said, like this type of conversations need to be you need to have this conversation with people. So we're gonna do a little exercise, a little different. So
sure.
Stand up straight.
Okay. Sit up straight.
Like I guess like sit down, just relax your body. Okay, and close your eyes.
All right.
Take 3 deep breaths. Let it go. One more. Keep your eyes closed. There you go.
Tense.
No, it's good. It's good. We're letting it go. So, just envision how the outcome is gonna be of all this. Envision that day that we're gonna win, and that day we're gonna, it's gonna be all over the news. That the Cold Access Pipeline has been stopped. So envision that for a minute. And when you're ready, I want you to send a message to everyone out there that's watching this and give them the call to action to come in a good way.
Yeah, well, I've seen it happen before. Nobody said we were going to win in the Delaware River Basin, to save that watershed. Everybody said we were never going to stop fracking in the state of New York. Constitution Pipeline, they said that was a done deal. 700,000 trees they were going to cut down. I've seen the people win, and it's amazing, and it's possible. We win when we're organized. We win when we're peaceful. We win when we realize that there's a greater purpose, because there's so much pressure on activists that we often fight with each other, and we have to try to put a lot of that aside to remember the bigger issue. Not to say that those fights aren't valid, but you know what I mean? Like, we have to go. We win, and here's the doors open. But we win when we really are determined, and when we win people over is because we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We make sure that we're peaceful. We're rational. We also actually believe in what we're doing in a spiritual sense. We're defending nature. But I've seen it happen. You have to believe. You always have to know that we can win. And to be honest, I think about this as every day. We win every day. You know what I mean? Yeah. The world isn't, it's the end of my film is the world is not saved or lost all at once. It's saved or lost every day. And so we have to concentrate on winning today. How do we win today? We connect with people. We create the community. We stand for what we believe in. And so we need to keep doing that. Every single day it's a commitment. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean if we win here, we go back to sleep. There's a lot of other pipelines around America. And a lot of other fossil fuel battles that we have to win as well. So the thing that keeps me going is, have we been honest today? Have we pursued a path with a heart? Have we been determined and strong and peaceful at the same time? You know what I mean? Did we connect to what is the center of all this? So I think we will win. I think they will never see a drop of oil go through that pipeline. I think we have a great strategy, because this watershed matters to so many people. We have to alert everyone downstream. But also, that pipeline is supposed to go through Iowa. And Iowa farmers are getting really organized against it also. So I think we will win. I think we have to stay strong. I think we have to make sure that we don't descend into violence ourselves. And I think that it's important that everybody understands that you're standing here not for just this one place, but for everyone around the world. And that when we embrace those values of generosity and of resilience, that we are winning it every day for everybody. You know what I mean? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to transform our energy system, but we're also trying to transform our values. And this is one of those places that's in the lead right now, so I'm very grateful. Thank you for this, and thank you for giving me a moment to just think about it and go, yeah, I want to see the people celebrate.
Yeah.
I want to see those hills out there with people riding on those horses with their fists in the air going yes, because that's what these people deserve. That's what I want to see, and that's what I saw when you told me to think about it. So I'm happy you told me to do that. Man, we often get so
because we cut up, but I think when we slow down, and I think just to add to that and to what you said, when you come to Standing Rock, it's a vortex of energy, and it's most important out of anything. It's a big prayer. Right. So then, when you come in, you are entering that space of prayer,
Yeah.
and then when you and then in the same way it's like you go to someone's house, you will respect their home, right? Like
Sure.
you will like enter, and I think that's what a lot of it's like readjusting those things that we have learned through society.
Mm-hmm.
That when people come here, like they'll leave and they'll leave a piece of their heart here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So what you were saying about that is like, yeah, like we're gonna win, but people, this is more than just what people call a protest. This is a vortex for energy for the whole world.
I agree.
And it happened here in Sandy Rock, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that people feel our society in the West can be so empty. We just build strip mall after Walmart after plastic piece of crap that you bought at Walmart. You know what I mean? And it's empty. And the cul-de-sac that exists in all those suburban communities that aren't arranged around what's real, they can get really mad about that. And that results in a lot of violence. And it results in a lot of dehumanization. Not just towards other people, but inside. So I think it's about connecting, and that's right. You know what I mean? This is a stand. This is a place, like, I think you're right. And that's why it's drawing people here. So get over here. Make sure you get here.
Get out of your house.
This is it. Get out of your house. Come on down.
All right, man.
If you can't come, send somebody who might be able to come.
That's true. Thank you, man. Appreciate it
All right, absolutely.
for that. And
Thanks, brother.
we'll look
Yeah,
forward-
no. Until next time.
Until next time. Adios.